Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Money Healing Podcast. We've got a very special episode for you today. I've got my friend Lauryn here, and we're going to be jamming about how to get a raise, how to ask for more money. And you know what? I know that there's a big part of you, the audience of the Money Healing Podcast. You might be employed, you might be business owners, or you might be a combination of both. And I have a feeling that the practical, emotional, and spiritual things that we're going to be talking about in this episode are going to, be more or less applicable to both parties. And just because we're talking about asking for more money, I just want to be very clear about something. This is not about pushing yourself, and this is not about you doing more or giving more, and this is not about pushing yourself into somebody else's definition of success. This episode is about, this is an inside job. Asking for a raise, asking for more money, raising your prices as a business owner, whatever it is, it's an inside job. It's an act of self-love. It's an act of reclamation of your well-being, your wellness, and your self-worth. And it is an act of giving yourself choice by asking for what you want. Or even in the beginning, let's start with like the choice of asking yourself what you desire and then asking others for what you want. So, without further ado, I would love to welcome in my friend Lauryn to the Money Healing Podcast, and I'm so excited to jam with you, Lauryn, today. How's it going? Welcome.
It's good. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, and what an introduction. Like, I love what you just said around the reclamation of your self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
And like, when you invited me to do this podcast, I think it's probably the invitation that I've been most excited to receive. I love the work that you do, and I know that we've had many conversations about this stuff in the past. So I'm excited to create some magic today for your listeners and your audience, and just help people, really bring together the practical, tactical side of asking for a raise, which is definitely something that I can bring into the conversation, but marrying that with the internal work, which, as you said, is like, that is the journey. That is what this is all about. And so hopefully whatever we discuss today, someone can take something away from it that really helps them in that internal journey to then be able to execute on the practical and tactical that we'll talk about as well.
Beautiful. Well, I know that we're kind of jumping right in, but I want to just say something about what you just said, is that sometimes when we don't do the inner work first, what happens is that we are waiting for our business or for our job to save us, to tell us that we're worthy, right? But when we do the inner work first, and then we raise our prices, and then we ask for a raise, that has such a different intention, purpose, and dynamic behind it, won't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so often, and we're all guilty of it, myself included,
Yeah, me too.
we give away our power
Mm-hmm.
thinking that if this then will
Mm-hmm.
be enough, will be worthy, will feel successful. Like, I remember in one of the, earliest conversations I had in my business, and when I, like, I was asked, like, what inspired me to go into the, solopreneurship journey. And I'm like, well, I'd done all of the right things, that society had said: go to school, get good grades, go to college, get a degree. In my case, I got 3. And, get that corporate job and you're going to be happy and successful. And I did all of that, and I got there and I'm like, I don't
What is
feel
this?
happy and I don't feel successful.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept grinding and grinding and grinding and grinding, trying to tick all of the boxes and do more and more and more and more and more, to the point of burnout,
Yeah.
thinking that when all of these things happened, that I would feel happiness, I would feel success, I'd feel worthy. And it's like, it took me going on my own journey of doing that inner work, which is such an, like, that is the conversation today. You've already said that in the beginning, and I just want to reiterate that, like, that is actually the conversation that we're having today. That inner work is that reclamation of your power of choice.
Yeah.
To decide that you don't need external validation to be enough or to be worthy,
Mm-hmm.
and to realize that that worthiness is your birthright, and that, like anything that you're going to create externally is a product of
And a
what you do
reflection.
internally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. So tell us a little bit about your journey. I feel like a lot of people would resonate with this whole I'm ticking all the boxes. Go to school, get good grades. Okay, you're at uni now. Ooh, what are you studying? Okay, get the best job. And I feel like of course this is our parents' dream for us. This is what they wanted for us. And this is what we've been conditioned to want for ourselves. But then when we stop and listen to ourselves, when we have that moment of stopping and asking, what is it that I want? We
Yeah.
realize that we're off track. And I've had that in 2015, 16. I also was ticking all the boxes. I had the best job at Melbourne Uni. I had the best boss that I love so much. I had everything going. But when I had a moment to stop and assess, it was like, really? And where is this going? Where is this going? What was the next step? Because of all the boxes that were ticked in a sequence, the next box was you gotta, buy a house. And I was like, I don't want to buy a house. And then I went back and I'm like, hang on a second. All these boxes that I've ticked, did I tick them or did I tick them because I had to? And just like that sequence of events of what society and your parents and your age and your gender and whatever is expected of you, it's shocking when you take that moment and go like, oh shit, where am I? Who am I? But before
Yeah.
we go into that, tell us about your journey, or maybe your journey is about that. So talk to us about what got you to where you're at right now.
Yeah, I'll cover both. It'll probably be long-winded.
That's
So,
fine.
um, like you know, I'm raised in a small country town, far north Queensland, Australia, and I'm very proud of my humble beginnings. But when I looked around at the examples,
Mhm.
within my own family, within my own community, you know, I didn't see a lot of pathways. I seen people that went to school, and when they finished school, they got married, they had kids, and there was that pathway. And I want to just preface that I have zero judgment on any of
Oh
these
yeah, of
pathways.
course.
They're
Yeah.
all valid, they're all important, and everyone has to do what is right and best for
Yeah, this
them.
is about
And then
stopping and asking yourself what's right for you. But yeah, we're not
yeah,
pooping on anyone here. I've got beautiful
no,
friends that
no,
have beautiful
absolutely not.
children and did the whole white picket fence kind of thing, and that's their thing, right? But
Yeah, yeah,
it's not for
absolutely.
everyone.
And no, and it's more like, if I'm going to talk about this, I want to be really real, I want to be really vulnerable, and I want to be really transparent. Like, if I think back to that time in my life, being a teenager entering into young adulthood, you know, to me at the time, that was like, it literally felt like this binary choice of, well, I'm either going to stay where I've grown up and lived my whole life, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have a bunch of kids, and I'm going to emulate the path that has been walked prior, for me, from my in my family. Like, I'd seen that example. Or I'm going to go to school and I'm going to go to uni, and I was the first in my family to go to university, so I hadn't seen that pathway. There's now others that have gone in my family that have gone to university, but because I was that, and like, I mean, the stereotypical, like, highly conscientious, highly perfectionistic, you know, some would probably say highly stressed and highly strung kid, there was all of this, messaging, not just like, I'll say, like, for my parents, I don't like, definitely I felt like there was some expectation that I was going to do something with my life, if you know what I mean. Like, I was either going to be earning or learning. I certainly wasn't going to be sitting on my derriere. But I think if I looked at both of them, they had very different sort of views as to about college and whether I needed to go away and do that.
Mhm.
So when there's that kind of difference in opinion, that creates its own problem. But then when I look at society and what it was saying, if you wanted the shortcut to success, it was to go to school, it was to get good grades, it was to be the best that you could be at everything, go to college, get a great corporate job, and then voila, the rest is history. But then there's like, so that's the messaging in society. But then I'll also say, like, when you're a young adult, like your teachers as well, when you're that conscientious kid
Mhm.
that's getting the grades, or you know what, or you have so much potential, you know, there's messaging that comes from there. So there's all these pressures. And I remember going through senior year and the pressure that was put on us to get the best score on our
Oh,
year
yeah.
12, you know, tests and whatnot. And it was like made to feel like if you didn't get a score at the time, we were in the OP system, which is 1 to 25, 1 being the best and 25 being the worst. Like if you don't get a 1 to an 8, you're like, your world is over.
Yeah.
Like your life choices are limited. So there was like, I felt an immense amount of pressure, but I will be very honest in saying I put a lot of pressure on myself to go to school and go to university. Like they were my choices. There were certainly obviously influences at the time that would have played into that. And I went and, you know, I went into physiotherapy because at the time there was pressures that I was, you know, going to go into medicine. And if it wasn't medicine, then physiotherapy was the next best thing. And I remember wanting to do psychology, but being sort of told two things. One, that it would be a waste of my grades, and two, that only people who are crazy do psychology. Like that was
That's what I was told. Asshole.
right.
I thought that was the whole thing in Jordan. I'm glad it was also in Australia. I mean, I'm not glad, but we're always poo-pooing
Right,
Jordan
like,
and all that. But it's not
yeah,
just
like,
us.
that was the connotation. And like I went into physio and had this wild experience of like I was topping one of my classes across 4 different disciplines, like occupational therapy, physio, like the health sciences. I was topping these particular classes and yet failing the rest of my classes.
Okay.
And I was like, so I failed out of physiotherapy. And it was probably the first time and first experience in my life of when you try to force something that's not meant for you,
Sorry,
it just
I'm not
won't
laughing at you,
happen.
but yes, it's so
No,
true,
you
right?
get it, right? Like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
but at the time, like internalizing that failure was awful. But I remember having a conversation with my dad and being like I don't see myself doing this for the rest of my life. Like it wasn't aligned. I didn't have the awareness that I have now. Hindsight is such a beautiful thing. But that was like some of the earliest sort of like seeds of being planted of like actually tapping in and connecting with self. It just took me probably another decade to get
Excuse
to the
me,
point of doing
I'm
the real
raising
work.
my hand for, a question, a rhetorical question into the world. How are we meant to know what we want to do with the rest of our lives when we're 18, 17
Oh
even?
my gosh,
How?
AQ, right?
How?
And why is the conversation so focused on you have to pick what you're going to do for
For the
the
rest
rest
of
of your
your
life?
life, even like career day when you're 15 and 16 at school. Like, why? How? I am all
I
about taking a few gap years. Ooh, yeah.
If I had my time again, I have I have said 2 things, and they're probably going to be controversial for listeners listening to me that actually know me and know me personally. I would, one, take a gap year
Uh-huh.
and travel as much as possible
Uh-huh.
because I feel like travel was the catalyst
Same.
for just broadening my horizons and giving me examples of so many different possibilities. And I've actually said it to, so many people that I've mentored. I've got younger siblings, and I've said that to them. Like, if there was one thing I could tell you, just go and travel. As
Yeah.
soon as you can travel, travel. The other thing would be is I love Ryan, and I've been very lucky. I found my person very early on in my life, my first year of university. But I've said to him, I'm like, I don't feel like we're encouraged to have time with ourselves and get to know
Yeah,
ourselves.
it's true.
And I've been very lucky to be able to go on my personal journey of working out who I am, which I'm going to be very honest, work in progress still.
Always,
I'm
right?
not sure that journey ever
No, I'm
ends, but
10 years older than you, and it's still a work in progress. So,
right. But
yeah.
like, I don't feel like there was a lot of space in between all of the pressure and expectations that come through teachers, parents, family, society, people like that are important in your life, and then starting college and then finding, my person,
Yeah.
to actually figure out, well, who is Lauren and what do I want? Like, I don't really feel like I started that journey until I was 30. But all of this to basically say, like, that was my story. I went to university. I did the first degree. Before I even finished that one, I had started the next one. So in my final year of psychology, I think I was doing like 7 subjects and having a meltdown every second day, because like that propensity and tendency to just constantly be trying to overachieve. I felt this pressure of like, well, I've got the first degree, but now I need to differentiate by adding on another degree, which was a business degree, whilst also starting full-time work. And I started in mental health. And then before I'd even, I finished psychology, business was still going. I was working full-time in mental health operations as a team leader. And then I had this like, this experience where in the course of a week, my entire life changed. I woke up, I was in an immense amount of pain, which is unusual for me. And by the end of the week, I'd been diagnosed with life-threatening liver tumors and lost my job.
Whoa.
And at the time, I was like, oh my, like, what am I going to do? Like, it wasn't like, initially there wasn't this, oh my gosh, I have life-threatening tumors. It was, who am I without my job? Who am I without my career? That achievement complex, right? And so I had that. And at the time, like, that happened for me. It didn't happen to me. And I went through that experience. And as I got out of, like, I went through surgery and I come out of all of that. And I wasn't supposed to come off the operating table. And it's funny, you know what I did up until the time of my surgery? I was madly trying to finish my business degree. Because, like, if I was not going to make it off the operating table, well, I had to get that piece of paper, right? Like, I had to get that done. And so, like, this is this vicious cycle that had been started. And then I come out of surgery, and I think everyone thought I must have been really high on drugs still. Because I'm like, I'm going to go do my master's. Because before going into surgery, I didn't feel that was possible for me. And so I went and did my master's, and my master's was in organizational psychology. And I loved the intersection of where psychology and business meet. It's funny, when I started the journey, I thought I was going into it to help, children, people like myself that had had some really, challenging experiences that they couldn't make sense of. Somewhere along the way, I found myself falling in love with the business psychology. So I finished my master's, got my dream job, loved the work, loved the clients, hated corporate culture. And so I remember it was in 2019, and I was living in Perth at the time, and I went into my bathroom and I looked like I was getting ready for work that morning, and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I didn't recognize who was staring back at me anymore. Like, I just felt so disconnected, and it really weighed on me heavily. And that's why I wanted to mention the story around getting diagnosed with liver tumors, is because I was told I wasn't supposed to make it off the table at 23. And here I was at 29, 6 years later, repeating this same vicious cycle. And I just felt like so disconnected from myself and so much guilt and shame, because it's like, what am I doing with this second chance that I've been given at life? And that just like weighed on me heavily. Like, I am hurting myself, staying in this cycle and burning myself out, and just this pressure. And I, like, anyone that's listening that can relate to this, like, how harrowing that is to have to go into the world. And I know you get it, Nadz, and I want to take a moment because I can see you there emotional too. Like, you have to go into the world and you have to put on this face and you have to smile and you have to be happy and you have to look like you've got all of your shit, excuse my language, together. But on the inside, you just feel so like lost and empty and overwhelmed and confused and like, why am I here? And what am I doing? And what am I meant to be doing? And like, it's confronting and it's uncomfortable. And so if that is you, I see you. And I want you to know that it does get better. It requires a lot of work. I'm not going to make any lies about that. But that day is a day that will stay with me forever, because I remember I went to work that day. And at this point in time, I was literally contemplating staying in Australia for at least a year while Ryan went to the US to take up an opportunity that he got.
Yeah.
And his move, like, we had thought that would be happening much later, but it got moved up. And I just like remember like looking at my life going, I'm in a relationship with my laptop, not with Ryan. Like, that thing sleeps beside me every night. You know, I used to remember going to sleep going, like, if someone breaks in and steals this laptop, like, that's the end of the world. Like, I was so attached to my job.
Yeah.
And, you know, from there, I was like, I'm getting up super early in the morning after having crap all sleep, going into work, working way more than the hours that, you know, is mandated for anyone to work, coming home, walking through my front door, I'd walk past my kitchen, Ryan would hand me a plate of food, I'd go and sit on the couch, I'd shovel the food in my mouth in 15 minutes, and then I'd be straight back on the laptop, and, you know, I'd be sitting next to Ryan, you know, we might have a TV show on or whatever, wasn't present, wasn't connecting. He would, you know, give me a hug and a kiss on the forehead, and when he went to bed, and I'd be still sitting on that couch till 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning, and this was just repeat. And I remember, like, when I got told, Lauryn, you just don't know how to manage your time. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Whoa.
You try telling someone that's just gone and worked full time and done 2 degrees at the same time that they don't know how to manage their time. Like, I know how to cram so much into my time, it's a problem. And at the time, that comment really irked me. Now I'm going to say to the boss that told me that, you know, I'm not sure they understood the full story, but I'm grateful they said it to me, because now I have such an appreciation for what they were seeing, and I truly believe that they were trying to help me, even if I couldn't realize that at the time.
Yeah.
But that was my story. And in 2019, I walked through the door one night, and when I stopped at the kitchen to get my plate of food, I held my plate of food and I proudly looked at Ryan. I'm like, I have to resign tomorrow.
Whoa.
And he looked at me and was like, what? Like, do we need to have like a deep and meaningful and psychoanalyze this from 50 different directions? Like, he was so used to me thinking through things a million different ways and I was like, I just know that was the exact same day that my morning started looking at myself in the mirror going, I don't realize who I am. Yeah. And if this is what life looks like, this is what I've spent over a decade working my backside off for. If this is what success is, if this is what happiness is, I don't want it, because I don't feel successful and I don't feel happy, and there has to be more to life. And why on earth am I considering staying here for another year while he goes off to America, when the only thing that I knew that was meant for me and that brought me happiness was the life that I had built with him as a partnership, you know. And so we moved to America. I sat on the couch for 4 months. I didn't have working rights, which was probably a really good thing, because I had to sit on my couch and I had to have my pity party, feeling like I'd blown up my life and that I was an epic failure. And like, I remember getting on LinkedIn and just feeling bitterness and resentment and seeing all of these other people get the things that I thought that I wanted.
Mm-hmm. Oh, whoa, getting the things, comparing yourself to others who have the things that you think you want, but your soul does not desire.
Well, I'm going to go one step further. Getting the things that you think that you want, but you know that you're not willing to do what it takes to get them. And for me, that was the contradiction that existed. It's like, I think that I want that, but I was playing that game and I know I don't want to be playing that game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, like, how do you rationalize this? So, I had my 4 month pity party, and I remember watching like webinars and different things at the time, trying to figure out, like, well, what am I going to do? If you know what I mean? Like, it was the first time in my life that I didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
And I remember just watching this webinar and seeing this girl that had gone to the same university to me. She had done one of the same degrees as me. She was working in um, like online, like digital marketing. She was associated with an MLM. And like for me, I'm like, oh, that's probably not what I want to do. But
Mm-hmm.
what was interesting, because I got really curious, and I want to say, like, curiosity is one of the greatest unlocks for anyone. Like, when you can just sit in a space and get curious, you'll be amazed at what you see differently.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at her and I'm like, well, she's written a book. And suddenly it's like, well, if someone from, she was from a small country town in Victoria, so she was from the same country as me, she had one of the same degrees, she was doing it. She had found a way to walk this different path
Mm.
and be successful at it. And so I'm looking at it and I was like, I had never, ever, like, hand on my heart, honest, never ever considered that there was another path to take. Like, in
Mm.
my head, it was like, well, if you're not going to school and going down the corporate pathway and getting a job or whatnot, then you're getting married and you're having kids.
Yeah.
And suddenly, like, it was like this, like, whole world opened up in front of me where I'm like, I can do anything I want to do, but I get to decide.
We
Like,
can do
oh my
anything we
gosh.
want to do as long as we choose what it is that we want to do and not walk in somebody else's definition of success.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And more than that, like, I had been saying to people within my circle that were important to me, like, life is a series of choices.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't like your life, just make a different choice. And remember that it's never too late to make a different choice.
Yeah.
One, and I don't want to say bad or wrong because I don't want to put those connotations around it, but like, if you make a choice and it's not the right choice for you,
Yeah.
just make another choice. I'd been telling this to everyone else. I hadn't been following it myself. And in that moment, I was just like, wow, I can do anything that I want to do as long as I exercise the power of choice
Yeah.
and understand that just because I chose to go to university and I chose to go into corporate doesn't mean I need to keep choosing that.
The,
And so
the thing
this,
is with that choice is that, no, hang on. The thing is with thinking that we don't have a choice, we start connecting or blending our sense of value and worth with our accomplishments and achievements. And
yeah,
when you say it's a journey of when we look at our lives and start deciding to make different choices and start deciding to ask ourselves what it is that we want, I see three layers, because the first layer is unlearning, the second layer is the
Mhm.
healing of our personal wounding, and then the third layer is the healing of the collective wounding that makes us feel like if we're not a cog in the wheel, then, and we're not giving, then we're nothing, right? So we're
Yeah,
associating that sense of worth with of our impact. And I've always talked about life purpose, but what I've noticed recently is that when we start associating the notion of life purpose with the work that we do into the world, that's just like another way. It's like a spiritual way of being capitalist, really. Honestly, like,
mm,
if we are saying that my life purpose is to create something for someone else, in without the notion of being in service and being helpful, it's just that my life purpose is working if I'm making money through it, that is a different way. It's pretty much we're doing whatever the corporate route is, but in a different, using different, more esoteric kind of like definitions and words. But
yeah,
when we start looking our life purpose as it's for us and taking care of ourselves, and then seeing how it can benefit others, for example, that is a whole completely different conversation.
you're playing in two entirely different games, right?
Yes, yes.
Like, and what's, there was a fabulous book that I read once. I can't remember the name of it. I know it was through the Harvard Business Review, and it was all about purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And it was talking like about the myths of purpose. And one of those myths were that we only have a single purpose in life.
Yeah,
And
I've talked about this
yeah,
in my podcast before, and I called it purpose eye, like the plural of purpose. Yeah.
but what they talked about is that you don't find your purpose,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't have a single purpose.
No.
You create your purpose. And I
Yeah.
loved that, because behind create is the intention, the choice to do
The choice,
something.
and that's why people are like, is your program, my program is called Create Fulfilling Abundance, is your program about manifestation? I'm like, no, it's about creation, because exactly that intention behind it of choice, you create.
Mhm.
It's a proactive thing, but it's not like the go-getter kind of proactive energy. It's more like you're co-creating with the universe. You get to
Exactly.
choose. I feel like that word is like the theme of this podcast episode of choice, right?
Choice and intentionality. I actually really love the title of your program, Create Fulfilling Abundance,
Yeah.
because create obviously has the power of intention and in choice. I love fulfillment, because fulfillment really requires understanding self
Yes.
and what is personally fulfilling to you, rather than striving for these virtues and ideals of like happiness. Happiness is an internal state, and it's going
Mhm.
to look and feel different to everyone,
To
but
everyone.
fulfillment goes so much
It's
further
more
than just
visceral, doesn't it?
happiness.
Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah,
I feel,
it's
yeah, even though
visceral and holistic,
visceral and holistic, even though I came up with the name, I always, like, it's been a year since I came up with the name, maybe less, but I always sit in like in wonderment, like, wow, what a multi-layered name, because
right?
fulfillment, for fulfilling, is such a personal thing, and
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with the expectations that people have on you, right?
yeah. It's again, it's honoring yourself
Mm-hmm.
in, and not in just one area of life, but thinking about fulfillment in life holistically, like you
Yeah.
said. And then abundance, I think, is such a better word than success,
Yes.
because success has so many connotations, and the world is continually telling us what success is and what success isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're not successful, then you kind of automatically feel like a failure. Where abundance, that's a completely different thing. You know, that's really like, and you're way better placed than I am to speak about this, but abundance is not success. Abundance is, it may even be present in the absence of feeling like a success.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's very
And
true.
so like when I think about your program, Create Fulfilling Abundance, that is literally shifting the narrative and the paradigm that so many of us have been born into and have continually had just pounded into us,
Hmm.
to say that if you don't do X plus Y and get Z, then game over. Like, you've failed at life.
Yeah.
You're not successful. You're not enough. You're not worthy. You're not this, like, so intention and choice is absolutely critical. And I love the layers that you spoke about, because to even start at the stage of unlearning requires bringing awareness,
Yeah. Yeah, right.
bringing
And bringing
awareness to
awareness
that.
is the first step.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you got to what you do right now with your clients. So what is it that you do for your clients? And yeah, tell us about your services and how you help your people.
Yeah, so as I, picking up where I left off, as I see
Mm.
in this whole new world of opportunities open up, I just remember looking at Ryan going, if I want something different, then I need to
Mhm.
be prepared to do something different.
Mhm.
Albert Einstein says doing the same thing over and over again position of insanity. And I was probably at that point where I had continued to just try and like force. And when you're forcing, you're not intentional and you're not harnessing your power of choice. Forcing myself, just let's call me the round peg, the square peg into this round hole, and it's not working, and I'm wondering why. And so I just was like, I'm just going to explore this other pathway. I was seeing people start online businesses. I was seeing people, doing business in a way where it wasn't about the bottom line, which so much of the time in corporate, everything comes down to the bottom line, like shareholders, board of directors, all of that. And they were doing it for service. They were doing it for impact on the collective, to contribute to something bigger and more meaningful, but also at the same time creating more abundance, more freedom, more balance. And I was like, gosh, that looks great compared to, what I've been doing. And so I kind of fell into solopreneurship. I have definitely consciously, intentionally chosen it. But originally, I feel like I was kind of just fumbling my way through like this exploration and experimentation. And I realized one day that so many people from like, even when I was a teenager, even early, would always come to me for guidance or mentorship. And often it was around career related stuff. And so the pandemic hit in 2020 and so many people were laid off and losing their jobs. And I just seen an opportunity to be able to help and use knowledge that I had to support people. And I was observing people that had, it was like this moment where all the dots connected. I remember being in my dream job in my corporate world and looking around and seeing so many talented people with so much potential, but they weren't the ones that were like called the high performers. They were often overlooked or misjudged or whatnot. And thinking, gosh, like how sad is it that we work this hard to just get into a job, and then everything about how we rise or fall is decided by someone else and their subjective opinion of us and our performance. And so then when everyone's getting laid off, I'm watching people that have been in their jobs for 15 years have no idea how the workplace works anymore or how the marketplace works in terms of, getting a job and marketing themselves. But worse than that is that so many people were saying like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I want. And realizing, well, wow, there's so much work to be done in this space. And so this was kind of the birth of my business, Lauryntium, which is, I'm going to just say, a career development coaching practice. And that's probably very limiting to what it is. For me, I actually describe myself, like you asked me who I am. I want to say I don't know, but it's such a cop-out.
You do.
But I would say like I'm a constant work in progress. I'm a serial learner that loves to just help and support people. But in terms of business and what I do, I say I'm like the Swiss Army knife of career development. I don't like being boxed in. That's one of the struggles I had in corporate. I don't see myself as a pure coach or a pure consultant or a pure mentor or a pure trainer. Like I have so many different skill sets.
Yeah.
So I'm like that Swiss Army knife. Like I just meet people where they're at and I understand
in the
where
realm
they're at
of career development.
Yeah, in career development. And then we pull out which tools out of that Swiss Army knife make sense at the time. And sometimes that is coaching, sometimes it's mentoring, sometimes it's helping with, brand assets and whatnot. So I do a lot of different little things, but all of it is really guided towards helping individuals shift from being stuck and stagnant in their careers and feeling like they're just passively going through the motions in their career, void of intention, void of choice, Like, there are people that are going to want to be in that corporate world. But if people are going to be in that corporate world, I want to be that person that can help them to do it in a way that they have meaning and purpose and fulfillment,
Yeah.
not success and happiness, because that's what's being prescribed. I want you to be able to go to work and know why you're doing what you're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and it to be something that you intentionally and consciously choose and create every day for yourself. I don't want you to be that zombie behind the keyboard, just going through the motions, trading time for money.
Can we just also say that you can still be that zombie behind the keyboard when you're working for yourself? So
Yes. Yeah.
when we are looking, okay, so when we're employed and we are, we're an employee and we're looking at the other side thinking, oh wow, the freedom of entrepreneurship. I want to quit my job and start my own business to have freedom, to have this, to have that. But you know what, y'all, it is not greener on the other side. Every side of the fence, whether you're working for yourself or you're working for someone, has the exact amount of pros and cons. To be honest, they all level each other out. When I compare myself, so if you're in a shitty, toxic job, that's a different story, right? So if I
Yeah.
compare myself now to my favorite job, I would probably, I don't know, maybe do my favorite job part-time because I love it, right? Because it has perks that I have community, I have a steady paycheck, I can go to work and someone says do this without me needing to like just think and feel into it and do all the stuff that really gets old after years of being in business for yourself. It's like,
But
oh
like
my God, can someone
that
just tell me what
job,
to do?
yeah, that job provided you things that were fulfilling to you, right?
Yes. So
It wasn't about
fulfillment.
the money. It wasn't about, all of the things that we're told are important in a job. There was things like you said, community, and I love that one.
Yeah.
Like there was things beyond the paycheck and the number on that
But
paycheck
I'm not going,
that
what
you
I'm
were
trying to say really is that it's not greener on the other side.
no,
I get so like flustered when I have clients that are like, oh, my job's good, but I need to do this. And I'm like, okay, you could, you could transition into doing both part-time and then see what's right for you. But what I'm really passionate about wanting to talk about now, like just for like 2 seconds, it's not the subject of this podcast
yeah,
episode, is that it's not greener on the other side. It really isn't.
no,
It can be toxic in either sides of the fence. You can have a toxic work environment if you're working for yourself, just as you can have a toxic work environment when you work for someone else.
absolutely. I think the biggest distinction that we need to make there is
Mhm.
when you're in a corporate environment where
Yeah.
there's so many other inputs in creating that toxic environment. When you're working for yourself and you've got a toxic environment, the input is yourself.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many entrepreneurs and solopreneurs that may not want to, admit it. But I think
Yeah.
if we're honest and we take a step
Let's
back
be
and we
honest.
we, we get really honest and transparent about this, when you come from that environment and you start your own business, the greatest likelihood is that you're going to recreate the conditions of that
Yeah.
environment
Yeah.
in your business because that's all you've known.
Hmm.
And so when you're starting a business, which I'm going to say absolutely like not greener, um, in the sense like one is not better than the other.
It's
They're just
not.
different. And each of them, like you said, come with their own pros and cons and challenges. But when you start your business, most of us don't go into it wanting to recreate those
Yes,
conditions,
but
but
we recreate
subconsciously
them.
we do.
Hmm.
We do recreate them, and then that comes back to our favorite theme of this podcast episode is you have to be intentional about the choices that you're making
Yes.
in your business to ensure that you're not recreating the conditions or the toxicity that you're trying to move away from
Hmm.
by creating a business. Creating a business is not the answer for everyone. That's why I'm saying like the work that I do, people are like, well, why are you helping people in corporate if if you don't want to be in corporate? For the right role and the right conditions, I would happily go back
Hmm.
into that corporate environment if there was things that were fulfilling. Like I said, I loved my work and I loved the clients, and I was very good at the work that I did, but I was feeling called to do something different.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be one or the other. I have had my business and taken a little project here and there, and dabbled back into the corporate world. I don't think we have to operate in these binaries. And I don't think one is the solution or antidote to the other.
Well,
You
here's the
know,
thing. Here's the thing. When we are living in a society where the cost of living is so high, when
yeah,
everything we do is revolving around how much money we're making just so that we can survive, we unconsciously start looking at our work, regardless if it's
mm,
corporate or self-employment, to fulfill all our needs. But in reality, that's not how it works. In reality, we need a culture and a society where we have some time to ourselves, because yes, we're working 5 days a week and woohoo, we get 2.5 days off, but guess what, we're using these 2.5 days to prepare for the 5 days that are coming ahead, right?
yeah.
So we don't have time for ourselves, and when we have these unfulfilled pockets, emotional pockets, we are wanting work or our partner or money to fulfill them, because guess what, we don't have time to think about how else we're going to fulfill them. And that's when we need
In
to pause and realize that we need to slow down, even though we are all living in a culture that is not very conducive to slowing down. It's all about the go, 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 and it's getting worse. It's getting even worse
yeah.
and worse and worse. And I thought it's because I'm getting older. But I think things are really getting a little bit more competitive, a little bit more expensive, and we can't just take a breath sometimes.
Well, I think if you don't have to look very far to see the pressures constantly being reinforced. And there's definitely, you know, the science and the history behind how we've got to this point.
Yeah.
We had that industrial revolution. We had that movement where it's like you sleep for 8 hours, you have 8 hours of work, and you have 8 hours of free time. Now we've had this like technological revolution, which
Mhm.
means through technology, there's this always on, always available culture. And my my dissertation and my master's was looking at this concept of workplace telepressure, which is a psychological phenomenon
Yeah.
that, as a result of this always on, always available culture that we now exist in, that technology enables, that we actually have a psychological reaction which is manifested as an urge to respond
Mhm.
to messages they come in. And if
Yeah.
we don't respond, we become preoccupied with them. So we're constantly like, you constantly just feel chained. Like, have you ever, like, I love to go camping and I love to go exploring in the national parks. And I love that so often you have no mobile service. Like, have you ever experienced how liberating it is to, like, just be in that space where no one can actually get a hold
Yeah.
of you, like, and you can't access the outside world through technology? Like, you actually just have to sit and be still and be present. Like,
Mm.
I crave that time so much, because that is what has been eradicated through this you know
Of
world that we're now living
course.
in.
Yeah,
We are
technology has
constantly
such a like a positive aspect, but it's keeping us in fight or flight all the time. And fawn.
absolutely, absolutely. Like, I am not against technology. Like, in
Mm,
my business, we use technology as digital business owners. We are on platforms. It's been an interesting thing to contemplate, and that's a whole other podcast, like, getting into when you can see a problem, then recognizing how you're enabling the problem and being intentional about the choices you're making and how you choose to operate, both personally but as a business owner. But you're right, like, we're constantly put in to situations where everything is reinforcing go, 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 busy, 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 achieve, achieve, achieve,
mhm.
productive, 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 be
More, more,
available, be
more.
available, be available, more, 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 more. Yet, how often are we hearing sometimes the answer to speeding up
It's slowing
is
down.
actually to slow down?
Yeah, I know. A lot of people think, or I it's kind of to answer an invisible question of like, as soon as I join your money program, Nadine, will I be making more money? And the answer is actually sometimes we have to slow down a little bit before we can shoot forward. It's kind of like that arrow analogy of to shoot a straight arrow straight into whatever, goal you want it to go to. You need to take it a few steps back. And that's what happens sometimes. If you want to go forward, sometimes you need to slow down and take a few steps back to assess and make conscious choices. And I like to always break things down into practical, emotional, and spiritual steps. And I'd like
Mhm.
us to dive into what are some of the key steps that one needs to take before asking for a raise, and how can someone emotionally prepare to ask for a raise?
Yeah. So I'm going to say like the straightforward answer is preparation.
Okay. What does
And
that mean?
you can't go in and ask for a raise if you're not prepared,
Hmm.
both tactically, but more so, as you said, emotionally
Yeah.
and spiritually. And so, I will say that more often than not, I get clients that come to me and they are in that cycle of, I want to just make more money.
Yeah.
I want to make more money. And so I hit them with that hairy question of like, okay, well, how much is enough?
Hmm.
How much is enough? Because you can get trapped in that cycle of thinking you need to make more and more money. But what's the
Yes.
point of having money if you don't actually know what you want? Because I don't think people always want more money. I think what people want is the experiences that money allows. But how do
Yeah.
you understand what those experiences are if you haven't done the internal work? And this is
You don't know
why
yourself.
exactly like,
Yeah.
and so much of the work that I do is, and the work that you do is the same. It's just happening in different spaces,
Hmm.
is actually working with people to slow down and go on that journey of self exploration and self discovery, and actually coming back in to their body and connecting with themselves mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, and getting clarity around what is fulfilling abundance, because there's no better words, you've already chosen them, to you. And so I will say that, this is why the work that you do is so important, and the people that have done this work before they come and try and do the practical, tactical career development stuff are the people that tend to see the results quicker. The work that you do is important because people are coming to you and they're going to understand, first of all, what is their relationship with money?
Hmm.
What is their attachment style to money? And what has that been influenced from in their experiences?
Yeah.
And then what is the money archetype that they're holding that's influencing the way that they're behaving and operating and the choices that they're making? And then they're looking at the money wounds and where those money wounds have come from. So it's a very holistic approach, and I would say a really beautiful starting point. So if you are someone who's like, well, I want to raise and I've got no idea why or how or all the rest of it, if you haven't done that work of really slowing down and sitting with yourself and understanding that relationship with money and going on a journey of looking at your money archetype, your money wounds, your money attachment style, then CFA is where you need to be.
Thanks, Loz.
Give, give, give Nadine a call, because I'm going to say, like, it was not something that I understood until I obviously met you, and we've had so many conversations and we've been on the journey of being solopreneurs together. And it is so critical
Yeah.
because obviously I've got that psychology background. So I understand attachment theory. I understand trauma and where wounds come from. And you're applying it in the context of people's relationship with money. And when it comes to preparing for a race,
Hmm.
the marketplace operates in terms of value.
Okay.
Value that you feel you have is going to be dependent on your self-worth.
Yeah.
And your self-worth is going to be a reflection of your experiences. And when you're asking for a raise, that is about money to some degree. I think there is so much more around a raise than just money. But if you just break it down simply, you're asking for a raise, you're asking for more money.
Yeah.
You're asking to be seen as being more valuable.
Yes.
If you want to be seen as more valuable by someone else, you have to be able to heal yourself enough to feel that value, to feel that worthiness. Because if you don't feel valuable and you don't feel worthy, you can go and ask anyone else for what you want. And yeah, maybe sometimes you'll get it, but it's not going to feel good.
Yeah, right. It's sometimes I feel like when we don't do that work first and we actually get what we want, the biggest disappointment is not feeling what it is that we thought we would feel when we get the thing that we wanted. That's the worst thing, because people come to me, they're like, I doubled my income, I still feel like crap. Like, that's
Yeah.
okay. It's okay. That's
Like
why you're here. We're gonna work on
that
that.
fleeting moment of feeling
Like,
on top of the
yay!
world,
And then
because you haven't integrated and
mhm.
done that work on the internal level, that moment is fleeting and you go back to that being stuck in that place.
So what I'm hearing is that before we ask for a raise, so let's say we're at a job and the money's not enough, or we feel like we're underappreciated, first and foremost, what we need to do is really work on our relationship with our self-worth. And
Yeah.
how would the conversation be different or sound different when we are coming from that place of integrity, from that place of self-worth? How do you envision the conversation with your boss to sound different?
So I think about it like this, everyone who is employed, even those of us that are self-employed,
Mm,
one of my mentors talks about this in terms of, in a role, you've got people that are reporting up to you, or you may be reporting up to them, or you may have peers or, vendors that are engaging with you. So you've got like beneath, above, and beside.
yeah.
Every single one of those levels is going to have a perception
Hmm.
of the expected value of your role
Yeah.
that they're expecting you to deliver. And often the people that are successful and, have the highlight reels on Instagram that everyone is craving and comparing to are those that are not only delivering the expected value, but additional new value above and beyond what is expected.
Okay.
And that's often where those conversations are based when we're talking about promotions.
Hmm.
When we think about the conversations and what we should be looking out for, when you're saying, I need this, but you can't explain why you need this, that's a pretty good indication that you're just going after that external validation.
Got
I
it.
need
Yeah.
this raise. I need this promotion. There's a self righteousness to it,
Hmm.
where I think when you're coming from that healthier place, it's like, okay, you're talking about your value. Like, I'm in this role and you can genuinely feel on a visceral level that, and feel confident in that you're delivering the expected value. You can recognize where you're creating new value. You can communicate that calmly. Like, you're not trying to validate or defend,
Hmm.
but you're actually standing in your self-worth and communicating powerfully and confidently, this is the value that I am creating, not I am of this value. You
Yeah.
separate yourself as the
Uh-huh.
person from the work,
Wow. Yes, I see.
because the work doesn't define your value as a person. So it's like a separation.
Hmm.
And it's two different conversations, right? Like, this is probably a very not necessarily being as clear as I'd like to be here, but you will know the difference when you're going into a conversation to ask for a
It's
raise
not a question
and
of
you feel
clarity,
like
though,
you're owed that
Loz.
raise.
It's more a question of a visceral
Yeah,
feeling of going at it and
yeah.
asking from an open-hearted place of curiosity and connection and openness versus going at it from a fight or flight perspective. energy kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, sorry. So keep
Like,
going.
are you looking for that promotion to fix something or to
Mhm.
stop you from feeling something?
Yes. Manifesting
The
from
bitterness,
wounding. Yeah.
yeah, that wounding. Or are you going from it from a place of understanding that you are of innate value
Mhm.
and you understand how what you do for work is generating X amount of value in alignment with the goals or the strategy of the company and can speak about what you do and the value that that creates for them,
Mm.
knowing that whether or not they say yes or no to your promotion has got nothing to do with you and your value as a person.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's two different conversations. And it took me longer than it should have to realize that.
But that's
I was,
applicable to both parties, the
Mhm.
self-employed and the people that are employed by a company or an organization. Because as somebody who is self-employed, I'm always asked as somebody who's self-employed and a money coach, like how do we raise our prices and what do you base your pricing on? And it really is about everything that you just mentioned. And question for you, how can someone, or if you can share some tangible, effective
Mhm.
strategies for maybe finding a better paying job?
Yeah. So I would say, like I said, come back to preparation.
Hmm.
Whether you're going for a raise in your current job or you're looking for a better paying job,
Yeah.
I think the first step is doing the inner work. We talked a lot about integrating. If you don't do the work and integrate it in, you're always going to be coming up to these resistant points where you might get the thing that you want, but it's not going to feel good. So that's why it's really important to integrate.
Yeah.
Do that work to integrate into your central nervous system. And so a lot of the times this is going to happen through those embodiment practices, and that's those practices, there's tons of them. I know that you talk about some of them as well in your program. And so I'm not even going to get into all of that. If you want to know more, then you should be reaching out to Nadine and having a conversation.
Thanks,
But
Loz.
it's those practices are going to look different for everyone. And I will admit that for me, I was like, how's that going to help? But honestly, when you start going on this journey and you're doing that work to integrate things into your central nervous system, to calm your central nervous system, to feel into your body, you will be able to recognize when you're operating from a wound or you're
Mm.
operating from a place of healing. And I'm not going to say healed because I think healing is a continuous
I like
journey.
to call it the open-hearted state.
That open-hearted state of like
Yeah.
you're not doing something with an unclear intention.
What about
You're
like
very purposeful.
up leveling your
But
skill? Oh, sorry. I think there's
yeah,
a bit of an
yeah.
overlap, but like I just want to talk about like up leveling your skills or
Mhm. So
doing these things.
that's the tactical, right?
Yeah, let's talk about
And
that too.
yeah, so we can go into the tactical. So once you've done your inner work, you'll have built your confidence. You'll find that you'll find it easy to shift out of fear and anxiety, and that's when you'll be able to start that separation of okay, well, this is me. Here's the work that I do.
Mm,
When you're thinking about work from that place of there's the expected value that my boss has, that my peers have, that my direct reports have. And then if you want to go to that level of I want to add new value, you need
mhm,
to start looking, well, how are you going to do that? And so we are now in a skills based economy.
mhm,
When people are assessing you, they are going to assess you on the value that you create. And the way that you create value is based on the skills that you have.
mhm.
So if you think back to like my own story, I've had to learn so many more skills throughout my journey to create different value for my
Yes.
clients. I
Yes.
can't just stay with, well, I got my piece of paper and that's it, I'm
Mhm.
done.
Mhm.
I would encourage anyone who's thinking about going for a raise and a promotion to really understand those two concepts. You are measured in value created and you're going to be promoted on value created, but you're also going to understand that people are getting hired based on the skills that they have and how they
Yes.
translate those skills into value. So always
Yes.
looking at how you can up level in
Hmm.
terms of what is there to learn. And it doesn't always mean going back to school and getting a formal qualification,
No.
you know, through mentoring, through short courses. Like, we live in a world now where you have so much access to information. You
It's
know, there is a
ridiculous, right?
movement. Yeah, there is a movement happening where there are companies that are actually getting rid of the requirements for, you know, formal education,
Hmm.
because they understand that you can have so many self-taught skills. So think about, how can you differentiate yourself from other candidates simply by adding to your unique value proposition? And your unique value proposition is really a product of, what are the skills that you have and what are the experience that you have, and how have you taken both of those to create this really compelling story that employers or hiring managers, or, you know, the people that are making decisions about your promotions can really connect to see you have these skills and this experience and are capable of creating this value.
Hmm.
And that's like, if we take away all of the other stuff, which I really don't want to, because the other stuff we've talked about is the foundations. You have to do that work first. But in the workplace, that's really how simple it is.
Yeah.
The thing that I want to touch on briefly is that so many people will go in and they have skills and they have experience and they have a unique value proposition. They communicate it well, they do all the right things, and the promotions don't happen.
Uh-huh. That's what I wanted to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do we
And that
do
can be,
when the raise is denied?
so, you know, it is so important to recognize that that decision is not about you half the
Yeah.
time.
Hmm.
You know, there are so many complexities and intricacies that go into, you know, how much money hiring managers can spend,
Yeah.
how much they can promote, when they can promote. Like, there's all these forces that are outside of yourself. So the first thing I want to say is, don't take it
Has
personally.
nothing to do with your self-worth.
It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with, you know,
Oh, and it
who
has
you
nothing to
are.
do with how much you believe you are worthy, and it has nothing to do with your innate abundance, because of all the things that we see online now in the personal development world on Instagram and all that stuff. We now self-flagellate and we feel like it's our fault if we're not abundant. It's our fault if our raise is denied because we are not believing in ourselves, or we're not believing to hard enough, or we didn't do our affirmations or self-care practices hard enough. Exactly as Lauren is saying, sometimes it has nothing to do with you, and sometimes the universe gives you what you need and not what you want, because we are here to be abundant, but we're also here to learn. We're also here to grow spiritually.
So well said. You know, a mentor of mine said, separate the fact from the feeling. When you
Mm-hmm.
get denied, you feel all of these things,
Yeah.
but those feelings aren't who you are. You know, that the feelings are not the facts. The facts are that you are an innately worthy human being.
Yeah.
And like you said, you are here to be abundant. So I would say it's important to understand that it's not about you. Recognize that there are forces way outside of you that you have zero control over, that have influenced why someone may have made the decision.
Yeah.
Stay calm and professional. Like, you don't want to react, but equally, you don't want to fawn either. If you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to retreat back and internalize and just let it be. Be proactive, ask for feedback. You know, I am really, I think it's just a theme at the moment with a lot of the clients that I'm working with, of just being bold and taking up space. And I was like, what do you mean by taking up space? Like, it's such a, you know, a weird term. And I'm like, so often we shrivel up,
Yeah, we
we
do.
play small.
Hmm.
No, take your seat at that table. Like, if you've gone into a meeting to have a conversation about a promotion and you get told no, don't shrivel up and play small and leave the room and just accept that that is what it is. Own your power, be intentional, exercise the choice to be like, I understand that a promotion is not available.
Yeah.
But can you please give me some feedback with specificity around what what do I need to do? What could I be doing differently? What more do you need to see from me? Like, try and understand what there is for you to learn and take away, and put that pressure a little bit back on that other person that has that decision making power to communicate clearly to you why you haven't got it. Not all of the external forces, but what is it about you
Hmm.
that you need to learn and understand and take away so that you can grow and learn and be, not be better, but like lean more into
Grow.
those things so that you can and grow and have the abundance. And then the other thing that I think so many people do is, okay, maybe they can't promote you with money. Maybe there's things outside of money that might be meaningful to you. Maybe you might want to, take the opportunity to have a conversation around what other benefits are available. And, this is a big one. Sometimes it's not about getting a promotion and getting more money. Maybe it's about getting a secondment and getting to go into another team and work on a particular project so you can grow those skills.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about getting to be nominated for a formal mentoring program, or getting to shadow a particular person. Those experiences are so abundant, they're so full of opportunity and growth and learning, that's going to help you fast track to maybe where it is that you see yourself wanting to be.
Yeah.
But there's actually, like, there's no, like, people don't ask for that when they're negotiating. They just focus on the money. And so much of the work that I do with people is, you need to understand the financial and non-financial
Hmm.
rewards that are available to you in a role. For some people, like, healthcare in this country is a big one. you know Getting that from your employer can be more important than getting the money that you
Could
ask for. You
be,
might take less
pretty much the
money.
same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, if you know what I mean. So, like, thinking a little bit more holistically, having that conversation, getting the feedback, exploring, are there other things that might be beneficial for you that you could be negotiating on and asking for? And
Hmm.
then the most important thing, especially if you know you're going to be staying with the company, set a date to revisit in the future and agree on that date upfront with the person in the conversation.
Yeah.
You know, so many people are waiting for the permission slips from hiring managers and their bosses and whatnot, and they are not owning their power to drive their own career. So, yes, they may have the decision making power, but you have a part in it as well.
Yep.
You need to be proactive of doing your inner work, getting clarity over what it is that you want, understanding more holistically outside of just money what is going to be available or could be beneficial to you in terms of those non-monetary benefits, and then keeping people accountable to the process.
Yeah.
Like, if you think your boss is going to come to you and be like, all right, well, let's catch up in 6 months to talk about your promotion, probably not going to happen. Where
Um,
if you're the one who sets the tone, you're inviting them in and you're communicating to them like that this is important and I am going to
yeah.
be an active, not a passive participant.
It makes me think about a few clients of mine that
Mm-hmm.
A, either got a raise, or B, got the conversation happening but had the raise as like the dangling carrot of like, yeah, maybe in 6 months. So what happens is, before doing the inner work, we fawn. We end up in overworking, martyrdom, people pleasing cycles of like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
they gave me more money, so I need to give more. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
they might give me a raise in 6 months, so I'm going to prove myself. So that can lead us to cycles of burnout and being overwhelmed with everything. And that is, again, to kind of re-emphasize the fact that we need to foundation everything with the inner work, because we need
Yes.
to uncouple, or separate the notion of our self-worth from how much money we're making or the income that we're doing. So the other question is, before we wrap up, is, what if somebody gets a new job and it's the perfect job, it's the perfect team, but they're not very happy with the base salary. What are some tips on how to approach a salary negotiation with
Mhm.
somebody who doesn't really know you or hasn't worked with you yet? It's in your new employer, and they haven't seen your work ethic.
Yeah, in that case, the best time to negotiate is always up front when you're accepting a new role.
Yeah.
It's much harder to negotiate, and I don't say that from a scarcity or limiting point of view, but it is much harder after the fact to try and negotiate. So where you can, I would say negotiate up front. It comes back to preparation, and if we get into more tactical things, it's about doing your research, understanding, if you go online and you look at your role title and you look at what other companies that are like competitors of your current company are, paying for roles, like it's really about understanding the wider marketplace and doing a process called benchmarking. Now,
Do you help people
normally,
with that?
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
It's one of the things that we work on, because benchmarking is something that's traditionally been seen as an activity by HR, and HR do it, right. There's to be competitive, they've got to look at what the market rate is for every role in the organization, and then balance this against, how much they've got to spend on overheads, because overheads, employees, are one of the biggest, if not the biggest, expense in an organization. I've actually reverse engineered that same process for individuals.
Yeah.
If you're going to go into a conversation and you're going to try and communicate your value, and you want to make sure that you're getting a fair and equitable offer, then you need to understand, okay, well, what is the value of this role in the industry? What is it? And like, you look at location, because what a software engineer gets paid in Silicon Valley is probably going to be very different to what
To
a software
Albuquerque.
engineer gets paid in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So it's about going through that process, doing the research. Once you've got that, you'll be able to understand the range in which you want to be asking for, just based on market value.
Yeah.
That's one piece of the puzzle. Then comes the other side of it, which I've sort of briefly talked about, which is you need to know how to communicate your demonstrable experience and value, how you've translated your skills and the experiences that you've gained throughout your journey into demonstrable value. And so often, when you look at, like, when I look at people's resumes, they're telling me their roles and responsibilities. They're not talking about how they took, this is the problem, these are the actions that they took, and this is the quantifiable, tangible, demonstrable result, and highlighting their value proposition.
So you
And
help
so
people
that is,
with resume writing as well, right?
we do it all. So whether it's resume writing, LinkedIn, prepping for interviews, negotiating salaries, doing career clarity coaching because you've got no idea where you're going, what you want to do, coming up with career development plans. So it's very holistic,
Mm-hmm.
what we do. But in terms of those tactical strategies, it's, you've got to understand the marketplace, and then you've got to understand yourself and that value proposition. And then you come up with that plan of, all right, I feel like this is the range that is market value. I feel like based on the experience that I've got, it's reasonable to expect, or like more than just reasonable. I would then go that step further, checking in what actually feels aligned.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a word we've talked about a lot yet today. So often we don't ask for things because we have that mindset of scarcity and fear.
Yeah.
You want to shift into a mindset of abundance and alignment. So
Yeah.
you will know when you're asking, oh, I've got fireworks going. You will
Why?
know when
How did that
I have no
happen?
idea. It must be an AI thing. I talk with my hands a lot. It's a
That's
terrible thing.
funny. Okay. Yeah, I see the
we're,
fireworks in the
we're
video.
fireworking for alignment, which is so on point. But when you're asking for a particular number, it's no different to us when we're raising our prices. You will know whether you feel are in alignment with it. You will know whether you're asking for too much and you're having like this really strong visceral reaction, which
Mm-hmm.
usually is an indication of there's more work to be done and you may not be ready. and that it feels like pressure.
Yeah.
Versus you're asking for a number where you feel really just like, for me, I just feel calm.
Yeah.
I feel like I can show up at that level and contribute value at that level with in alignment with that number. There's no pressure or like ick or imposter syndrome. Like, it just feels really aligned. It feels really abundant. And so I would say focus on that number. And so I say to people, there isn't a formula. There used to be like, we'll always ask for 30% more than what you're currently on. Mm-mm. I would say look at market value, look at what that range is. So it might be from 120 to 140. And then I'll say to people, okay, what is the number, the minimum number that would feel most like if they come back and this was the number that they gave you, you would feel okay with that? You know, what's your absolute minimum?
Yeah.
And the minimum is important because if you get less than the minimum, you'll notice you'll probably get some bitterness and some resentment, and you'll feel frustrated. You'll feel like you're being like taken advantage of. Get that number, and then from that minimum, go up. Okay, well, what if it was, you know, 135?
Yeah.
All right, what about 140? And find that point where you're like, oh no, that feels like ugh, you know, that pressure. Like you don't know if, and then you've got your personal minimum and your personal maximum.
Yeah.
You go in and you always ask for your maximum. And if you don't get your maximum and they come down to your minimum, well, you know that you've got that minimum number that you know feels good for you. And if you've done the preparation, you'll have the examples. You know, like when I went through a promotion, I went and I got feedback from so many people, you know, to understand how people were perceiving me. And I documented all of that. I looked at my utilization rates, like how much time was I actually getting spent on projects. I'm looking at what are all of the extracurricular things that people are doing, like, because so often people just think about what they do in their job. They're not actually looking about how they're contributing collectively to the culture of an organization.
Oh, yeah.
There's things that you're doing outside of just what you're getting paid for that are adding value in the organization. And you need to be able to, like, it's like a pitch, right? You're literally pitching yourself like, this is what I've done. This is the value that I've created. And if you've done the research, you know when someone's trying to lowball you on a number. And so the point is like, this is all the tactical preparation stuff. And I've got a checklist that I'm going to give to your audience, you know, that they can get if they go to my website. We'll put it in the show notes. And that'll like give you like the steps of all the things to do. But I really want to be clear in iterating one thing. All of the tactical and practical is all good and well, but it doesn't have a lot of utility, and it certainly doesn't have a lot of effectiveness if you haven't done that inner work. You know, I have been through promotions where I've been successful. I've been through promotions where I haven't been successful. And I can say, if I went back and relived those experiences now, having done the inner work that I've done, I think that my path would look extremely different. I'm glad that it doesn't, in the sense that everything that has happened has led me here. And I want to really reiterate that point as well, is like, everything, as hard as it is in the moment to recognize this, everything is actually happening for you, not to you. And you said that, you know, like sometimes we don't get what we want, we get what we need. And I would say just
as
sit
hard
in that
as
place.
it sounds and as painful as your reality might feel, it's just always happening for you. And it's nice to think about it this way. It's not a reframe. It's not a mindset shift. It's not none of that crap. It's really just taking ownership instead of being in that victim role, just stepping up, taking ownership. And that just changes everything once we start doing that. Once we feel like we're the captains of our own lives, that's a massive difference.
Yeah, you start to see that there's a distinction between your professional value and your personal worth.
Yeah.
And when you bring awareness to, you know, like, if I've got time to share a story about one of my clients, you know, I have an incredible client. She's become an amazing friend. And, you know, she met me at a time where she came in and she's like, my goal is I want to be promoted by the end of the year. And the problem, well, it wasn't a problem, but the situation was is that she wasn't in a role that she was going to be promoted. It was she wanted to go out into the marketplace and get a new role at
Oh,
a new
right.
level.
Okay.
And, you know, we went, like, we explored, like, what had been happening for her. And, you know, it was funny. I seen a lot of myself in her. And she said, you know, like, I'm just so frustrated because I've been working so hard and I've been doing all the things and I've been giving so much value away and I never get recognized and I never get promoted. And I, you know, like, and so I had to say a really hard thing to her. And I was like, when you're giving so much of your value away for free, why is someone going to be incentivized to pay you for it? And she looked at me and I said, do you think you're valuing yourself? And there was this aha moment where she realized she wasn't valuing herself.
Yeah.
And everything that she was doing was coming from this inner wound of not feeling enough.
Yeah.
And she was stuck on this, she was 10 years older than me. She said this had happened more than once in her career, you know, and she had reached that point of feeling really frustrated. And by just simply bringing awareness to those wounds and how that was influencing the choices and the behavior, instead of getting the goal that she wanted in 6 months, she got it in 4 months.
Wow.
And she ended up getting more money. And she's in, just through the work of doing that inner work, not only is she in a situation where she got the promotion and she got the money, but she's in a role that is actually aligned and feels abundant. And she's in an organization that is aligned and abundant.
Yeah.
And that's the difference.
We need
That's
these
what I want people
fireworks,
to take
Riverside.
away. Yeah, right? Like, that's what I want people to take away. If you're going to work, you have a choice around the role that you take and the organization that you're going to work in. And if you're clear on your values and what's important to you beyond just the money,
Yeah.
you can shift from being in this perpetual cycle that society continues to just push at us to operating in a completely different way where you can still exist in society, but you're playing a way different game. And the result of that game is abundance, and it is fulfillment.
And it is fulfillment.
And
you
most
created it.
Yeah, but most importantly, and I really want you to wrap up and share your take on this, the relationship that you have with yourself as a result of playing that game and doing that work, like how that just changes. And you realize that the most important investment that you can make or have is that relationship and connection to self.
Of course, yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of this life, is just being compassionate to ourselves, unlearning just unlearning how we are pressured to be robots, understanding that we're humans, understanding that we all come with a set of wounds, and just navigating through life and loving ourselves regardless. I mean, self-care is not just the manicures and the pedicures and the massages. It's also loving yourself when you're not at your best and working through all that and creating the fulfillment that you are here to experience. And then everything else is just a byproduct of that. So
yeah. And on your own timeline, you know, I think that's the key that I don't think gets talked about enough, is that we're in a world now where we're, you know, like I said, I'm sitting on my pity party and I'm looking at what everyone else is getting on LinkedIn. You know, we do it on Instagram, like every day we're making, you know, so many judgments and so many comparisons, and it's so destructive to our mental health when we're caught in that cycle.
Gosh, I know, right?
But, you know, when you build that relationship with yourself and you do the inner work and you build that self-confidence and you start to co-create your own purpose and your own fulfillment and your own abundance, you recognize that you're on your own timeline. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to not be there yet. Sometimes you don't get somewhere because it's not where you're meant to go. That's
Right?
honestly what I believe.
Yeah.
Honestly, what I believe was what was happening for me in my corporate career. I wasn't supposed to get there, because if I got there, I wouldn't be here doing the work that I'm doing now. And I said, everyone, I'm at a point where I'm making the least amount of money I've ever made in my life, but I am the most fulfilled that I've ever been. And I have so much more purpose in what I'm doing than what I was experiencing in my corporate career. So don't be afraid to slow down, but equally don't be afraid to run at your own pace and realize that
You are your
it's
own
not a
pace.
marathon. Yeah, it's not a marathon. It's not a sprint. You are the journey.
Yes, exactly. I hate that. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Like, no, it's neither actually. It's actually,
Yeah,
please,
like,
neither. Can we not run? Please, can we
yeah,
not run? Can we slow
like
the F down? I
we
mean.
we have to shift the narrative. And when you realize these things, when it gets to the strategies that I work with people on, whether it's getting into community, networking, building your personal brand, like developing your plan and whatnot, it's like I said, it's completely different when you've done the inner work versus when you haven't. When you haven't done it, it's going to feel like you're forcing. When you have gone through that process, everything just will, like, it's not to say it's without challenges, but
Yeah.
there will be an ease and a flow that comes with it, and a peace
Yeah.
as well. So,
And a
I
fulfillment.
think, yeah, and eventually abundance.
Yeah. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the Money Healing Podcast. I will make sure that I pop in all your links in the show notes. But where can people follow along on your journey? Where can people find you, or maybe send you inquiries if they would like to work with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will make sure all the links are in the show notes. The best way I would say
I
to
will
reach
make
out to
sure,
me,
Lauren. I
yeah.
will.
I would say the best way to reach out is via an email. I'm a people person.
You're a people
So
person.
at the moment, if you go on my Instagram, I haven't posted anything, and my website is actually in the process of being launched. So you'll just see the coming soon page. So I'd say just reach out to me with an email. I love when people pop in and, just have a conversation. That's what it's all about. Like,
Yeah.
we're all just humans. We're all just helping each other to learn and grow. And I don't know all the things, but if you have a question or you want to have a chat, like, just pop in my inbox. I'm there.
Beautiful. Cool. Well, thank you so much for everybody who stuck around for an hour and a half. This is historically the longest episode so far on the Money Healing Podcast, and I think it's fabulous. And I am really, really happy that we got to do this today. And for everybody out there, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for, being here and caring about your finances and caring about doing money the holistic way, not in the forcing way kind of thing. So I will see you all next week, and I will love you and leave you. If this has been a fun, informative episode for you, please consider leaving us a review, maybe 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts, because that really helps. The other thing I want to share also is that we've got a couple of spots available for the March 7th intake of Create Fulfilling Abundance, my 6-month holistic money healing journey. So if this is calling your name, if you feel like you are ready to do the emotional work to create fulfilling abundance, then please reach out or look at the link in the bio, or the link in the show notes rather. And yeah, come join us. I'd love to have you. Thanks everyone, and see you next week.